There exists a profound and often overlooked dimension to our departure from this physical plane, one that transcends the mere biological cessation of life. When the body completes its journey, the soul begins another. But what happens when we accelerate this transition through cremation? The ancient wisdom traditions have long understood that the soul's detachment from its physical vessel follows a natural rhythm, a sacred timing that allows consciousness to gradually recognize its freedom from material constraints. Edgar once spoke of this as the gentle untethering, describing how the soul typically requires a period of adjustment as it witnesses the body's slow return to the elements. When we examine cremation through this spiritual lens, we encounter the first significant consequence. The abrupt dissolution of the physical body may create confusion for the departing consciousness. Imagine awakening from a deep sleep to find your bedroom suddenly transformed. Such is the potential disorientation when the soul's former home is rapidly transmuted into ash. I have counseled many families who share experiences of loved ones appearing restless in dreams following cremation. One woman in particular described her father repeatedly searching for something in her nighttime visions, as if attempting to locate the physical anchor that had been prematurely removed. These are not mere psychological projections, but glimpses into the soul's adjustment process. The physical body serves as a transitional bridge, a familiar reference point that allows the consciousness to gradually recognize its expanded state. When this bridge is suddenly eliminated through cremation, the soul may experience a momentary disorientation, like a traveler whose landmark has vanished before the journey's completion. This is not to suggest that cremation creates permanent spiritual harm. The eternal consciousness ultimately transcends all physical limitations. However, we must acknowledge that the sudden transformation affects the soul's experience during those critical initial phases of transition. Ancient Egyptian practices reveal this understanding through their elaborate preservation methods, which were designed not merely for cultural or religious purposes, but to facilitate the soul's gradual transition. Similarly, traditional Buddhist death rituals often recommend waiting several days before cremation, allowing the consciousness to fully complete its departure. When working with those approaching transition, I often suggest creating a spiritual preparation regardless of the chosen disposition method. This involves conscious acknowledgement that the physical form is temporary while the essence remains eternal. Such preparation can significantly ease the soul's journey when cremation occurs. The residual energy field of cremated remains merits our attention as well. The body's physical matter contains energetic imprints that don't simply vanish during cremation, they undergo transformation. Sensitive individuals often report distinct energetic signatures when in proximity to cremated remains, different from those experienced near a buried body. This transformed energy field creates a unique relationship between the departed consciousness and those who maintain connection with the remains. One family described placing their mother's ashes in their home garden, only to experience her presence most strongly in that specific location. The concentration of these energetic remnants may create focal points for the soul's awareness, potentially tethering aspects of consciousness to these locations, rather than allowing complete freedom of movement in the spiritual realms. As we contemplate these spiritual dimensions, we must remember that consciousness exists beyond physical constraints. The soul's journey continues regardless of what happens to the body. However, the path of that journey, its initial clarity, comfort, and direction, may be influenced by how we treat the physical vessel that once housed it. In understanding these spiritual consequences, we gain the opportunity to approach end-of-life decisions with greater awareness. Whether cremation is chosen for environmental, practical, or personal reasons, acknowledging its spiritual implications allows us to implement compensatory practices, prayers, meditations, energy work that can smooth the transition for the departing soul. The wisdom of recognizing these spiritual dimensions doesn't diminish the validity of cremation as a choice, but rather enriches our approach to this profound transition. By honoring both physical and metaphysical realities, we create space for the soul's journey to unfold with greater harmony and conscious awareness. When we examine the deeper spiritual implications of cremation, we must acknowledge the profound role that traditional funerary rituals have played throughout human history. These practices were never merely cultural conventions. They were sophisticated spiritual technologies designed to guide the soul through its transition. In many traditions, these rituals created energetic pathways that the departing consciousness could follow toward its next destination. The modern approach to cremation often compresses or eliminates these rituals, creating what spiritual adepts refer to as interrupted connections. These are sacred sequences that, when broken, can leave the transitioning soul without familiar guideposts. I have observed this phenomenon repeatedly in my work with grieving families who chose immediate cremation without accompanying spiritual practices. One particularly moving case involved a family who had their patriarch cremated within hours of his passing, following his explicit wishes for efficiency and practicality. In the weeks that followed, family members independently reported unusual experiences: lights flickering when his name was mentioned, dreams where he appeared confused, and inexplicable sensations of his presence in rooms he had never visited. When they consulted me, I explained that the soul was seeking the completion of transition rituals that had been bypassed. The ancient understanding of death as a process, rather than an event, is critical here. Traditional societies recognize that the soul's separation occurs in stages, not instantaneously. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes a 49-day journey through various bardos, or transitional states. Native American traditions speak of a soul's 4-day journey to the afterlife. Nearly all spiritual traditions acknowledge that the soul requires time and guidance to fully transition. When cremation occurs rapidly after death, these natural transitional phases may be compressed or disrupted. The soul, still accustomed to identifying with its physical form, may experience the equivalent of spiritual vertigo when that form is suddenly transformed. This is not merely theoretical. I have encountered numerous accounts from mediums and sensitive individuals who describe souls expressing confusion or disorientation following rapid cremation. The energetic field that surrounds human remains continues to serve as an anchor point for consciousness after death. This field dissolves gradually during natural decomposition, paralleling the soul's gradual release from physical identification. Cremation accelerates this process exponentially, potentially before the consciousness has fully prepared for separation. I counseled a woman whose husband had been cremated immediately following his unexpected passing. She described vivid dreams where he repeatedly asked her where it had gone. Through our spiritual work together, she came to understand that his consciousness was seeking the familiar energetic signature of his physical form as a reference point. Once she performed a simple ritual acknowledging this transition, these dreams transformed into more peaceful encounters. Another significant aspect concerns the dispersion of ashes. When cremated remains are scattered across multiple locations, the energetic signature of the person becomes similarly fragmented in the physical realm. Some spiritual traditions suggest this can create a form of energetic confusion for the departing soul, particularly if it hasn't fully completed its detachment process. The soul may experience a pulling sensation toward these various locations, rather than a unified movement toward its spiritual destination. I have worked with families who intuitively recognize this dynamic and chose to keep the majority of ashes together in one location, while using only small portions for scattering. This approach honors both the spiritual need for energetic coherence and the emotional desire to create memorial connections in meaningful places. It's important to note that preparation can mitigate many of these challenges. When a person has spiritually prepared for cremation during life, through meditation, energy work, or conscious acknowledgement of the transition process, the soul appears better equipped to navigate the accelerated physical transformation. This preparation creates a form of spiritual readiness that transcends the physical process. For those who choose cremation, incorporating transitional rituals before the process can provide significant spiritual assistance. These might include periods of silent meditation near the body, the recitation of sacred texts designed to guide the soul, or energy work that helps release attachments to physical form. Such practices acknowledge and address the soul's need for coherent transition, even when the physical disposition occurs rapidly. The relationship between cremation and the soul's journey illustrates a fundamental spiritual principle. Consciousness requires integration time when moving between states of being. By understanding these spiritual mechanics, we can make more informed choices about end-of-life practices and provide appropriate support for the soul's journey, regardless of the chosen method of disposition. The energetic properties of cremated remains represent one of the most profound yet misunderstood aspects of this transition process. Unlike what materialistic science might suggest, ashes are not merely inert mineral compounds. They carry distinct vibrational signatures that continue to interact with both the physical and spiritual realms long after the cremation process is complete. In my decades of spiritual counseling, I have encountered numerous families who instinctively sense this energetic presence within the ashes of their loved ones. One particularly remarkable case involved a woman who kept her husband's ashes in an urn on her mantelpiece. She described how houseplants placed near the urn would flourish exceptionally, while electronic devices in the same vicinity would often malfunction. When we examined this phenomenon through spiritual discernment, it became clear that the energetic field emanating from the remains retained aspects of her husband's electromagnetic signature, an energy that nurtured living things but disrupted artificial electrical fields. This energetic retention explains why many people report feeling strong emotional and spiritual responses when in proximity to cremated remains. The consciousness that has transitioned retains a subtle connection to these physical remnants, not unlike how a radio signal continues to be associated with its broadcasting station. This connection is not one of containment. The soul is not trapped in the ashes, but rather one of resonant frequency and energetic correspondence. When ashes are kept in homes, they create what spiritual adepts call energetic anchors, or frequency doorways, that can facilitate ongoing communication between realms. Families who maintain mindful, intentional relationships with these remains often report greater ease in sensing the continued presence of their loved ones. Conversely, when ashes are stored without conscious acknowledgement or are treated as mere objects, this potential for connection may remain dormant or become distorted. The environment surrounding cremated remains significantly influences this energetic dynamic. Ashes kept in peaceful, harmonious settings with regular expressions of love and remembrance appear to maintain clearer channels of spiritual communication. Those placed in chaotic, neglected, or emotionally charged environments may create confused energetic fields that make spiritual connection more difficult for both the departed soul and those remaining in physical form. I worked with one family who experienced persistent feelings of heaviness and unease after placing their father's ashes in a dark closet, largely out of uncertainty about how to relate to them. When they created a simple, beautiful altar space where the urn was placed with fresh flowers, photographs, and occasional rituals of remembrance, the entire energetic atmosphere of their home transformed. Family members reported dreams where their father appeared more peaceful, and several experienced spontaneous moments of guidance that carried his distinctive wisdom. The dispersion of ashes introduces another layer of energetic complexity. When remains are scattered across landscapes or bodies of water, the soul's energetic signature becomes integrated with these natural elements. Many spiritual traditions view this as a form of energetic expansion that can facilitate the soul's evolution, provided the dispersion is conducted with conscious intention and appropriate ceremony. A particularly moving example involved a spiritual seeker who requested that his ashes be divided, half scattered in the ocean he loved, and half incorporated into the soil of a memorial tree planting. In the years following, his family members independently reported sensing his presence both near the shoreline where ashes were scattered and in the flourishing growth of the memorial tree. Rather than creating confusion, this intentional dispersion appeared to expand his soul's capacity to communicate through multiple natural channels. For those with developed spiritual sensitivity, the differences between the energetic fields of cremated remains and a buried body are readily apparent. Buried remains create a concentrated, localized field that gradually disperses as decomposition occurs. Cremated remains, having undergone rapid transformation through fire, emanate a more diffuse but intensified field, one that reflects the catalyzing and transformative nature of the cremation process itself. This transformation through fire carries profound symbolic and energetic significance across spiritual traditions. Fire represents purification, rapid transformation, and the release of essence from form. Souls whose physical vessels undergo this fiery transformation often demonstrate accelerated spiritual evolution, in the afterlife realms. Though this acceleration sometimes comes with initial adaptation challenges, as previously discussed. The question of whether to maintain proximity to cremated remains or disperse them ultimately depends on both the soul's journey and the needs of those remaining in physical form. Some souls benefit from the maintenance of a stable energetic anchor point as they adjust to non-physical existence, while others thrive with the expanded connection that dispersion provides. Spiritual discernment, meditation, and attention to intuitive guidance can help families determine which approach best serves all involved. What remains constant across these varied approaches is the importance of conscious intention. The energetic properties of cremated remains respond directly to the consciousness applied to them. When treated with reverence, awareness, and love, they become powerful conduits for ongoing relationship between realms. When approached unconsciously or fearfully, their potential for positive connection remains largely unrealized. The journey of the soul after physical transition represents perhaps the most profound mystery we encounter in our exploration of spiritual consequences. While direct observation of this process remains challenging from our earthly perspective, accumulated wisdom from mediumistic communications, past life recollections, and cross-cultural spiritual insights offers us glimpses into this sacred passage, particularly as it relates to cremation. Throughout my years of spiritual service, I have been privileged to witness remarkable accounts of communication from souls who experienced cremation. These messages, delivered through gifted mediums or in profound dream visitations, reveal patterns that deepen our understanding of the soul's experience during this process. One consistent theme emerges. Souls often report witnessing their own cremation from an external perspective. This observation period appears to serve an important spiritual function, allowing the consciousness to recognize its separation from the physical form being transformed. A particularly insightful communication came through a gifted medium whose elderly client received a message from her recently departed husband. He described watching his cremation with a sense of fascination rather than distress, noting that the experience helped him finally understand that he was not that body anymore. This witnessing perspective highlights a critical spiritual truth. Consciousness does not reside within the physical form, but rather expresses through it. When cremation occurs, the soul observes the process from outside the body, experiencing a profound lesson in non-identification with physical form. For souls who have maintained strong attachment to their physical appearance or bodily capabilities, this observation can accelerate their spiritual understanding, though sometimes with initial confusion. Another significant pattern involves the soul's relationship to time following cremation. In numerous communications, departed souls indicate that rapid physical transformation through cremation sometimes correlates with an accelerated transition process in the spiritual realms. One medium regularly received messages suggesting that cremated souls often move more quickly through the initial phases of spiritual adjustment, though this acceleration occasionally requires additional support from spiritual guides. This acceleration appears connected to the symbolism and energetic reality of the transformative fire element. Fire represents rapid change, purification, and the release of essence from form across nearly all spiritual traditions. When the physical vessel undergoes this fiery transformation, the soul often experiences a parallel spiritual intensity, a more rapid dissolution of remaining attachments to physical existence. However, this accelerated process is not without challenges. Some communications suggest that souls who had not prepared spiritually for death may experience a form of disorientation when cremation occurs quickly after transition. Without adequate preparation or understanding, the rapid severing of physical connections can create what some traditions call transition shock, a temporary confusion as the soul adjusts to its new state of being, without the gradual dissolution process that burial provides. I counseled a family who received consistent dream communications from their grandmother following her cremation. In these dreams, she repeatedly appeared confused about what happened to her house, a metaphoric reference to her physical body. Only after the family performed a beautiful ceremony, explaining the cremation process and affirming her continued spiritual existence, did these dreams transform into more peaceful visitations, where she appeared fully oriented to her new reality. The The reincarnation process may also be influenced by cremation practices, according to certain spiritual traditions. Some esoteric teachings suggest that the rapid dissolution of the physical form can alter the traditional timing of the soul's preparation for rebirth. In cases where individuals were spiritually prepared before death, this acceleration might facilitate a more direct path toward their next incarnation experience. For less prepared souls, additional time in the intermediary spiritual realms may be required to integrate the lessons of the previous lifetime before reincarnation becomes possible. A particularly fascinating pattern emerges regarding the soul's ability to communicate after cremation compared to burial. Many experienced mediums report that communication often establishes more quickly with cremated individuals, though the initial messages may contain references to confusion or adjustment. This accelerated communication ability seems connected to the soul's more immediate release from identification with physical form, allowing greater freedom of spiritual movement and expression. For those preparing for their own transition or supporting loved ones through this process, these insights offer practical spiritual guidance. Conscious preparation before cremation, through meditation on the temporary nature of physical form, spiritual study, and explicit acknowledgement of the transition process, appears to significantly smooth the soul's journey. Similarly, conducting meaningful ceremonies before cremation that acknowledge the soul's continued existence and explain the purpose of the cremation process provides important spiritual context for both the departing soul and those remaining in physical form. Perhaps most important is maintaining conscious communication with the departed soul after cremation. Regular periods of quiet meditation directed toward the loved one, the creation of sacred space honoring their continued spiritual presence, and openness to dreams or intuitive impressions all facilitate ongoing connection. These practices acknowledge a fundamental spiritual truth, that consciousness transcends physical transformation, and that our relationships continue evolving across the threshold between worlds. As we integrate these understandings, cremation becomes not merely a physical process, but a sacred transition ceremony, one that, when approached with spiritual awareness, can facilitate the soul's journey toward greater freedom, understanding, and evolution. The fire that transforms the physical vessel becomes a symbol of the eternal flame of consciousness that continues its journey unbound by physical limitations, carrying forward the essence of all we have been and experienced into new dimensions of spiritual existence. If these spiritual insights have illuminated your understanding of life's greatest transition, I invite you to join our community of conscious explorers. Subscribe to continue this journey of discovery together as we uncover more ancient wisdom for modern souls. Share your own experiences or questions in the comments below. Your perspective may be precisely what another seeker needs to hear. Remember, in the realm of spiritual truth, we are all both teachers and students. The wisdom grows stronger when shared. Subscribe now and let us walk this path of understanding together.